Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Unplugged Woodworkers podcast. So, welcome to my humble abode. Having real trouble trying to get a recording today. I've tried a couple of times, just being far too noisy. I don't particularly like doing it in my own house because it's very echoey. You might also hear some noise, and that would be my log burner because it's quite cold tonight, so if you hear a creaking and a snapping, and that's what it is. So what have I been up to? So I kind of made another another unit for my van, and I don't like it, to be honest. Again, I'm really not digging this van. The space is just so small, and I'm really struggling with it. But you know, I'm gonna kind of leave this one as is and try and grin and bear it and see how I get on with it. So today I did actually use some of the elm I didn't want to use. Unfortunately, there was quite a lot of woodworm damage. I'll try and put a picture up. I think I took a picture of it, so I'll put a picture up. There's a really lot of damage of woodworm. Obviously, I wasn't aware of how bad it was because this was just rough sawn boards. I've had the boards for about 7 years, somewhere in that region. I did actually use one of the boards, I think it was last year. You know, it did have woodworm damage, but it wasn't like overly bad where this board was bad. It's a shame because it's quite nice. The grain itself is quite simple, but at the same time it's pretty. It's a little bit hard to describe. Kind of different angles that your view hits it from, it reveals another, like a little simple shade, or that's kind of the only way I can describe it. But it is a nice piece of elm. It's just unfortunate that there's a lot of woodworm damage, but it is what it is. So last week I did actually forget to mention that I did do a little video for anyone that's interested and want to check it out for the for the last cabinet I made for the van, which is now dismantled in pieces. I did actually make a simple little latch. You know, it's quick, it's easy, very, very simple. You know, it didn't take long at all to make, but I did actually make a video of that, so if anyone wants to check it out, there'll be links in the description, as there's links for all of my content. So what impressed me, this is something I've had for a little while. I think I've seen it a couple of times, and it kind of keeps on getting put back to the list. So I kind of decided to do it like today, so it doesn't get lost, because it's a really good piece of furniture. I think so anyway. So it's basically, I've seen two examples. This cabinet's by Adrian Martinez. I'll put a little video on the screen now for those of you that are watching on YouTube. So for those of you that aren't watching on YouTube, so this was a unit, and what made this pop out to me was the tambola doors, or the tambour doors rather, and the tambour doors were made with recycled skateboards. So it's the colours. It's the colours against the walnut. It just, wow. If you're listening to this, I really implore you to go and have a look at the piece of furniture. It's absolutely stunning. You've got the beautiful walnut, and then you've just got the very loud, in-your-face colours of all the recycled skateboards, multi-colours, but it works. It's the only thing I've seen of that nature that, like, in my view, like, works. It's a really, really good piece of furniture. He also did this with a coffee table. I don't think the coffee table's in the video that I'm showing you. that's on the screen at the moment, but the coffee table was absolutely beautiful as well. Me being an unplugged woodworker, I don't really fancy recycling all those skateboards, but you know, if I actually had some machines, or maybe some use of some machines, and obviously the skateboards, I might actually give it a go, because it really looks stunning. Obviously this would be a piece I would just keep for myself. You know, it's really beautiful. So go and check the video out, go and check the guy out, Adrian Martinez there. Obviously there'll be links in the description if you want to go and check that out and follow him on Instagram. So today I just wanted to talk about a few different techniques, a few different ways I do things differently. You know, kind of not going with the status quo, you know, kind of not following the herd, if you will. You know, I do kind of a lot of experiments, like kind of messing around as I'm working. A lot of this comes just out of necessity, because I'm outside using a room workbench. Don't get us wrong, I've got a bench round at my mum's that I could like disassemble and bring around. Yeah, it's got a vise and everything. And I've also got like a full-size bench in my shed that I've never ever used. It's got actually like a couple of things that need finishing on it. You know, it wouldn't take as long to actually finish it, and you know, I think I've shown it before. There might be a picture kicking around. I'll see if I can put one up on the screen somewhere. But you know, it's just, I enjoy so much working with a room workbench, and you know, the way I'm kind of working without a vise. You know, as I've said many times, I'm not against vices. Just, you know, it's just how it is at the moment. So out of necessity, I do often find ways to do things a lot differently. Not with everything, but you know, quite a lot of stuff. And there's also just like a lot of different techniques that I do different in any way, or that I don't tend to see a lot of people doing. I'm not saying everything I do is a be all end all and I'm the only person doing it, by no means, you know. There is other people doing what I do, but the point I'm making is I don't tend to see a lot of people doing some of these things. You know, as I've said, like, you know, you'll get a YouTube video, or you'll get an Instagram post that will, you know, have like millions of views or hundreds of thousands of views, and then people will just like start copying, going along with the herd, and instead of experimenting, sort of thing. I am a great believer in, like, you know, try to do things that are better suited for yourself, rather than following things that I'm doing or anybody else is doing. Like, make things work for you. I'm a great believer in that. So I'm just going to go through a few things on how I do things, and kind of compare them, not in a bad way, but just kind of compare them and my thoughts on it, to how other people do it. So today I was actually flattening a piece of elm, and the elm was for the cabinet for the van. So I've done like a quick video, a reel as it was. I'll put it up somewhere around here, and it basically showed me how I sharpen a card scraper, and then straight into card scraping the piece of elm. So for anyone that's listening now and they're not watching the little video that I've got on the screen, basically how I sharpen a card scraper, I kind of do it back to front, if you will. So instead of holding the burner shaft with both hands and running the burner shaft, I'll actually hold the card scraper and run the card scraper over the burner shaft, where the burner shaft's stationary, and I've kind of got it clamped with my hands in the position on the bench. Obviously I'm straddled on the bench, sitting down, and as I said, I'll put the card scraper backwards and forwards. You know, I do pick up a little bit of speed, But obviously, like traditionally, you know, it's putting into a vise, and the burner shaft moved backwards and forwards across it, you know, at speed. You know, there's actually there's quite there's quite a lot of people like posted videos and they've like made all these weird and like jig contraptions, and you know they're kind of like telling you what angle you should do and how, and you know where you should place it in the vase, how high it should be in the vase. You know, if you raise it so many millimeters in the vase, and then you can rest your burner shaft, you get a nice little angle. But if you, for anyone that hasn't seen it and you're not watching this YouTube video, you know, you're listening to this on maybe Spotify or something like that, go and have a look at how I do it. There's nothing special. It's quick, it's simple, and I always get good results. You know, I've demonstrated this a few times on my Instagram. I think I even done a video on YouTube. I'm pretty sure I've done a video on YouTube, like, you know, basically how I do it in a you know, like a talk through. But it's real simple, and you know, I did actually get a comment today. I'm trying to think what the comment said. So the comment basically says, this goes to show most of us are overthinking how we prep a card scraper, and there's like, you know, laughing emojis after it. So I don't necessarily think people are overthinking it. I think personally, somebody kind of develops a method of how to do it, and then everybody just follows suit. It might be a little bit unfair to say that, I suppose, because again, out of necessity, necessity and laziness, which is usually the case with me. I learned to do it, you know, how I've just demonstrated today on Instagram, or how I've just explained. So if you're watching how the video showed, you know, it's just so quick and easy. You know, don't need to clamp anything up. You know, it's, you know, I just need my burner shaft. This particular video, I did actually use a file. So when I am doing this, I don't use a file every time, because you can actually turn the burr a couple of times, meaning that you can sharpen it without using the file. So you know, typically I get maybe 2 or 3 sharpens out of it before I have to use the file, but it will get to the point where you have got to remove the burr, because the burr is just far too, it just won't shave how it's supposed to, so you have got to remove the old burr and put a new burr on it. It's just the nature of it. But in the video, obviously, I showed doing it with the file, and it's really quick with the file, so you can imagine how, you know, it is actually a little bit quicker doing it, you know, without the file, which, you know, a lot of the time I get to do. So that's just kind of one of the things, it's, you know, that I do differently. Don't get us wrong, it probably will take, you know, someone a little while to get used to, but, you know, as you can see, or as you've seen on the video, it's super quick. Okay, so here's another one, and I see lots of it, and I really, I wouldn't say it's a pet hate, and this does work. I'm not saying it doesn't work either, because it does work. Not that I've done it, I've never ever done this technique, but obviously I know it works because people are using it. If it didn't work, people wouldn't use it, obviously. So when people use, you know, the blue painter's tape or the blue masking tape to mark out for the dovetails, it's just like the one. I wanted to say I don't see the point. Obviously, I understand why people do it, and as I've just said, it does work. But it just seems like, to me, it just seems like such a faff on. It's like, they put it on and then they get everything lined up, and then they get the knife, and then the nice and get right into the corners, and taking the time, and they take it off, and then they carefully peeling it off, and ever so delicately going all the way along, so me, what I do, and I'm pretty sure, there's still people that do it, although I don't see a lot of people doing it at all. Use a pencil. It's, so get your board lined up, get the pencil, make sure the pencil's nice and sharp. Actually, instead of sharpening the pencil to here how you would normally sharpen it, make sure it's sharpened all the way down to here, so it goes to a nice slender tip. And when you've got a nice slender tip, is what this does. This allows you to get right into the corners of your tails. So once you've done that, you're good to go. Start cutting. You just leave your pencil line on. That's it. That's the secret to get like nice fitting dovetails. Once they're marked out, leave your pencil lines on. It's honestly, it's that easy. I've told a few people this, and a few people are kind of looking at us and they kind of say, really, is that it? Honestly, it's as easy as that. Just leave your pencil lines on. Another thing as well that I see people doing while I'm on it, I'm having a bit of a rant here. But while I'm on it, when people will mark the back of the board out, so if you can imagine, I've got a board, so this is a board, I've got a board in front of us, and I've marked out, let's just say for my tails, or the pins, because I will cut pins in the vertical position. So we'll mark the front, so that's going to be a square 90 degrees down, line down to the shoulder line. Obviously we're going to mark the top, so these are going to be like 80-degree marks to coincide with the 80 degrees of the tails, which I commonly use 80 degrees. So what I say, like a lot of people do, is once they've done those two markings, they'll actually mark the back of the board, so they'll draw like 90 degrees, a 90-degree line like on the back of the board. It's like, I really don't see the point in that, and there is no point in that. Once you started cutting with a saw, you get your first dimension, which is maybe say the 80 degrees, then you get your second dimension, which is the 90 degrees line going down to the shoulder line. Once you've got those two dimensions and you start cutting, you cannot enter a third dimension. It's physically impossible for you to change that. So as I said, once you've got the 80 degrees, once you start dropping your saw, or at least this is how I do it, I'll get my 80 degrees, start dropping my saw, I've got the 90 degrees, and then I've got my plane. That's the one plane. You can't change that plane. So there's no point in putting lines on the back. Even if you start veering away from your lines, you can't change that. There's just, there's honestly, there's no point in doing it. There's going to be people out there that argue and say, oh well, you'll be able to see kind of, if you're going off your line, but you're going to be able to see it anyway. You're going to notice it with your eyes. Anyway, that's enough. I'm having a bit of a rant here about that. Okay, so another one is cutting curves. So what I'm talking about here is larger curves, maybe foot in radius, maybe something like that, 300 millimeters. So I haven't been doing this like years and years, but I have started doing it maybe in the last maybe 2 years, something like that. But I find this very quick, pretty accurate, and after the cut I don't particularly have a lot of cleaning up to do. So typically for me is what I'll do, I'll cut the curve and then I'll clean it up with a spoke shave. So how I've seen people do this, I've actually seen people use a coping saw and cut round with a coping saw, and I've seen people do this with a frame saw as well. So the problem with that, or at least the problems that I've seen, and I obviously have done this, is that the blade for the coping saw and the blades for the frame saw are quite small, which is actually good, because this allows them to get into really tight corners and it allows them to cut really tight shapes. You know, when I made my first framing saw, you know, for this type of work, I think one of the first things I did was to actually cut out like a jigsaw piece, you know, and it done it perfectly. It was just so you know, good to get those small little circles. You know how you join jigsaws up, you know, absolutely great. I was, you know, I can remember quite vividly, I was like, wow, it's like how you know, how just how good it got into those small little circles. So when you're actually cutting like a curve using something like that, or using a coping saw, you tend to get like a really raggedy line. So I don't suppose there's a great deal wrong with this, other than the fact that it does take you more time to do it, and also the cleanup, you know, the cleanup can take you a lot longer. So the problem with the cleanup is, because the line's all wonkety, is when you're using your spoke shave to actually smooth the curve out, what you'll find when you're passing your spoke shave through the curve or through the cut, it'll skip because of the uneven cut. So that can be really annoying, and it does, in my experience, it takes longer, you know, to get them high spots off, and to actually start taking a full shaving. Another way I've seen, and this is probably my preferred method if I don't use the method that I'm gonna get into in a minute, is that I'll actually, if I've got the board, I'll actually just draw a 45-degree line across and just cut 45 degrees straight off it, and then we might have two smaller angles, and I'll cut them off. Probably take a chisel to it, you know, and get any more like kind of the angles off, and you know, maybe a spoke shave or a Shinto rasp. So that's kind of what I would do probably for a smaller curve, which I do actually do for a smaller curve. So what I like to do for the larger curves, my preferred method now is to actually use my Ryobi saw. So if you actually put the Ryobi saw straight into the cut, you would actually, for those that are listening, I'm actually demonstrating on my little notebook I've got here. So how I do it, I would start the cuts with the long grain. So with the long grain going down into the curve, into the curve, and then kind of finishing on the end grain. that's how I would do the cut. So sometimes it is actually necessary just to do a little notch where you're going to start, and this is just to create a little shoulder line for the saw to get started. So when I'm doing this, this is solely down to the thinness of the Ryobi blade. You probably could do it to a degree with a Western style saw. I have done very slight curves with Western saws, but I don't think you get such an extreme curve what you would get with a Ryobi saw. Obviously, the reason you can get away with it is because it's so flexible. Obviously, there's different degrees of flexibility in the Ryobi saw you get. The one I use for this, I do forget the name of it, but it's specifically for cabinetry. So I have actually got, well, did have two blades. So the one for the cabinetry, obviously I do like to use that. The gauge is thinner and it allows you to actually cut nice curves like that. The next one up is kind of like a general purpose. Yeah, you can still do, like cut quite a decent curve, but if you want to really, like a nice, neat, tight curve, I would recommend the Ryobi saw. I think it's somewhere in the region of like is it like 0.4 of a millimeter, something like that. So it's a really fine blade. So obviously it's just the mechanics of the saw, how it allows you to do it. Because you're pulling it, it creates its own tension, as I've explained this before. So as I said, because you're able to flex it and you're able to get the tension at the same time, you can get a really beautiful cut with it, even obviously on the curve. And why I like to do this is because it's quick, it's easy. I've always got my saw to hand with us. It's always in my hand basically. And the cleanup's just very minimal. If anyone's kind of used these saws, they'll know what I'm talking about. You do tend to get a very nice cut with them, a very fine cut. You will get a better cut with one of these, than a Western style saw. If you're kind of going to be using a panel saw, kind of this. It might be wrong for us to say this, or there might be a lot of people that might disagree with us, but I kind of compare the Ryobi saw, obviously minus the ripping portion of it. Well, I don't know, maybe not, but I kind of compared my Ryobi saw to a panel saw. So, but the thing with the panel saw, or rather the thing with the Ryobi saw, you get a lot cleaner cuts. It'll cut just as fast, or most likely quicker, than a panel saw. But that might just be me, kind of being biased to the Japanese saws, because I do really like the Japanese saws. But I personally think that it's valid reasons why I like them. They are so good. But yeah, I don't see anyone cutting curves how I've just described. I have demonstrated a couple of times. I think probably one of the better demonstrations is when I cut the board arm for the last well stick chair video that I made. That's on my YouTube channel if you want to check that out. But it is a decent curve. I think somebody commented on the video, basically, they were like, wow, I was like totally like, oh, when you cut the curve with it. And I think a lot of people do get surprised when they actually see us cutting a curve, with a saw. Just kind of, when you think of cutting wood with a saw, a lot of people, myself included, like a lot of years ago, you just consider a straight line. It's kind of primarily what they were designed for, really, just to cut straight lines. But there's always a little bit of give and take, and things you can do. You can always push your tools a little bit more to do a few things they weren't originally intended for. Maybe the right way we saw was, that I don't really think there's a great deal of information on like kind of Ryobi saws and how to use them and whatnot, or at least there wasn't the last time I looked. When I first started using them, however many years ago that was, there wasn't a great deal of information. I did find a few articles here and there, and I did have a few people telling us I was using it wrong, which I disagree with. Basically people, I think it was like a couple of people said that when you're using a Ryobi saw, you should start the saw cut close to you, whereas on a Western saw you would start the cut away from you, which, yeah, I kind of disagree with. So this will work perfectly if you're cutting maybe like a stile on a door, something like 50mm, 75mm, something like that. But when when you try to cut something that's 300, 400, 500mm, if you're cutting multiple boards that are glued together, let's just say for a dovetail blanket chest, something like that, there's no way you're gonna be able to cut a straight line, starting from where you are, And I did actually see examples of one or two Japanese craftsmen, after digging a very, very long time, cutting how I was cutting anyway. So it just goes to show you, you shouldn't always listen to what people have got to say, myself included as well. Don't take everything I say as gospel. But it does go to prove that people may say, tell you one thing, and they might be contradicted. Obviously I seen two traditional Japanese crafts people cutting how I was already cutting. So it goes to show you. Okay, last one for today. So I haven't seen anyone do this for such a long time. I have seen a handful of people do this, but it's been such a long time since I've seen anybody do it. So removing material from a mortise, maybe a mortise for maybe a table leg would be a good example of this. Although I do pretty much use this on all mortises, pretty much. I just find it super quick. It's just really quick. There's no really guesswork in it. So just using a bracing bit to remove the waste material in the mortise. I think maybe in the last year, anytime I've seen anybody do a mortise and tenon join, it's either been used on a machine or using a chisel, but they've kind of done it the traditional way, shall I say, where you would just, or maybe if you're familiar with Paul Sellers' kind of method, it's very similar to that. There is different variations like on that, where you'll just use a chisel, you chisel and you keep on working your way along, and the more you chisel, it actually gets deeper. That's just kind of the nature. I'm not going to kind of go into depth, there's some good videos on it. Obviously Paul Sellers has done a great video on it, so you obviously go on his YouTube channel and check it out. There's nothing wrong with this, but I just feel that if you use a brace and bit, or even a drill bit, if you want to use a drill bit, it's just quicker. Obviously, I understand, people like to use the tools and the chisels, so if you kind of want to do it like that, I'm not saying don't do it like that. A lot of the time with me, when I'm kind of making like things, it's like I just like to get on with it. I like it to be done. Sometimes when I linger on things for too long, I just kind of lose interest, or I start stressing this out. It's like, if you've got mortise and tenon joints to cut, you could have anywhere from 8, 10, 12 like mortises, so me personally, I just I just like to get the mortises done and dusted out of the way. I think another thing as well, it can take its toll on your hands and your wrists. Obviously there's a lot of chisel work and mallet work with that. Another issue specifically for me as well, obviously a lot of the stuff I do is outside in the back garden, so I've kind of got my neighbours as well, so they are quite good with this, they don't complain. In all fairness, I don't make a great deal of noise, but just with the way this estate is structured, or the way the houses are structured, it can kind of create like an echo effect. So if there's any loud banging, it echoes from the houses, because you've got rows of houses. So as you're melting, obviously the noise is just echoing. So you can imagine if I've got like 12 mortises to cut, there's going to be a lot of noise. So obviously if you're using your brace and bit to remove the majority of the material, it cuts down on the amount of material you've got to use. Plus, the majority of the material you're moving, you're actually chiseling down with the grain rather than end grain. So when you're using a chisel, a mallet and chisel on the end grain, it does tend to be harder and it does tend to create more noise. So that's how I like to remove the material. How I do it, obviously I get me mortise measured out, set out, using me marking gauge on my mortise gauge, and then I'll find the centre line, I'll draw the centre line, or I'll mark it with my marking gauge. Do the same on the other side, so I'll drill multiple holes, however many holes I deem necessary, and I do actually keep them close together. It's not uncommon for us to actually cross. So if I've got one circle, I'll actually cross ever so slightly. You have got to be careful doing this, because obviously if you cross the circles or the holes too much, when you're drilling down on the second one, it will actually just slip into the first or the previous hole that you've just drilled. So I will only go slightly just over halfway with these. Once I've done that, I'll flip it round and I'll start from the other side and I'll go through. Obviously, if this is a stop mortise, which sometimes it can be, I'll just use a little bit of tape, technician's tape, and that'll be my depth stock. Obviously, kind of same sort of process really. Obviously I just don't have to turn it over. That's pretty much the only difference. But yeah, I love doing it like that. I don't think I've cut a mortise with a chisel for it must be a lot of years. As I said, I'm not really against it. It's just I find it quicker to do it this way. It's less noisy, and as I get older, my wrists and my elbows they don't get any better. 25 years of scaffolding, it takes its toll on the body. So yeah, that's just how I like to do it. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Any questions, hit us up, Instagram or Facebook, email, whatever. So until the next time, I shall see you guys and speak to you guys later.